Story, especially the $70 million house and why it's on the market, again, adjacent to criminal activity. First, I want to begin in Canton, Massachusetts. I want to talk to you about an unexpected and clearly unnatural death in that tight-knit community just south of Boston. There is scandal. There are allegations of police conspiracy and cover-up. And there's an active criminal investigation. And there's a civil suit from the victim's family. And before you yell at your television and throw peanuts at me saying, I already know everything there is to know about the Karen Reid story, and I'm way ahead of you, Ashley. Before you do any of that, this is not that story. This is the story of Sandra Birchmore. And it is a hell of a story. Sandra was found dead in her apartment back in February of 2021. Her death was more than a year before the now infamous death of the Boston police officer in that same town, the one that ended up with Karen Reid being charged for murder. This is a year before that. Sandra Birchmore was 23 when she died, and she was 3 months pregnant. Officially, the manner of death was called suicide, and the cause of death was called hanging. But now that seems to all be in dispute, and that is where those police connections come in. Sandra loved the police. Look at her. Here she is. She's so tiny. When she was 13, she loved the police so much, she joined something called the Explorers program of the Stoughton Police Department. That's when she officially met that guy that she's photographed with, then Deputy Chief Robert Devine, who's the one proudly standing next to her in that picture. She stayed in that Stoughton Police Explorer program for 6 years until she was 19. But then, according to a lawsuit filed after her death and after an internal police investigation, Sandra did not learn the best practices of policing. Hell no. Sandra learned the exact opposite. The allegations say that that young girl who only wanted to serve and protect the kid was instead preyed upon and, quote, passed around and groomed by the male police officers that she most admired. The internal investigation named and accused these three guys, these three officers. Robert Devine, the one you saw in the photo, he's on the far right. And then these two twin brothers, Matthew Farwell, he's on the left, and twin brother William Farwell. Not one of these three has been criminally charged. All three of them left policing, left the department. The family's lawsuit claims that 4 days before Sandra's body was discovered, Officer Matthew Farwell was seen right there on police surveillance. Hoodie up. This is her apartment. Sandra reportedly told friends that Matthew was also the father of her baby. And as you can see, as he departs, right there through those doors, he may have been the last person to see Sandra alive. We have reached out to both the Stoughton and Canton police departments, as well as the medical examiner who ruled Sandra's death a self-inflicted suicide. They have yet to get back to us. I'm still waiting. I'm here. Put you on at any time. Mic is yours. For now, though, I'm giving the mic to someone else, News Nation correspondent Caitlin Becker. She's been following this case very closely, and she's with me now live on this summer Wednesday. Caitlin, there are a lot of really uncomfortable details in this lawsuit from the family. Can you go over what a lot of these allegations point to?
Yeah, disturbing is putting it really mildly here. I think you have to remember, Ashley, that when we're looking at the time frame, she was just 13 years old when she joined this Explorers program, and that's what introduced her to the officers that would allegedly become her sexual partners. Now, in the lawsuit, as well as this internal police investigation, Ash, and that's what gets me, because the police have looked into this. They both essentially say the same thing, that when she was 15 years old, she allegedly lost her virginity to one of these officers and continued a sexual relationship, which included explicit photos, disturbing videos, explicit text messages, hundreds of them, with 3 of these officers and possibly even more. One of the most disturbing is the idea that she was allegedly passed around like a toy, and that William Farwell allegedly tried to introduce her to other officers within the department and encourage her to also develop a sexual relationship with them. And according to that internal police investigation, Ash, up into the time of her death, it's unclear if any of these had actually stopped happening. So multiple sexual relationships could have been going on at the same time. Of course, we already mentioned the fact that she believed the father of her child was Matthew Farwell.
Okay, and then so there's Matthew Farwell, and apparently they've got text messages, they allege, between Matthew Farwell, the alleged dad of this baby, 3 months pregnant, Sandra, and the alleged text messages between them suggest that he acknowledges taking her virginity April 2013, where if you do the math, she would have been 15 years old. Have they presented those text messages?
You know, the thing is here that both the police investigation and the lawsuits, like I said, say the same thing. So it appears that they have copies of this. I mean, when the chief of police discussed this at a press conference, she said they went through hundreds and hundreds of these messages, parsed through them. It took a lot of time to see what these exchanges were like. They were very explicit. In some of them, there was the indication that perhaps they wanted to film some sexual encounters with her, the suggestion that she should have sex with other people in the police department. So it does seem that the police have looked through these already, but what we got was kind of just a strong admonishment, but not criminal charges.
Yeah, there's this other, apparent exchange between the twin brother to the alleged father of the baby, and that twin brother is William Farwell. The allegations say that there's messaging between William Farwell and young Sandra, asking her to record herself having sex with other officers and send it to him.
And they were all seemingly aware that their co-workers, or in this case siblings, were all engaged in a sexual relationship with this one person. And actually, some of these things actually happened on the job. There were allegations and indications in these messages that they actually happened inside of some of the police cruisers. So it's really, really disturbing stuff. And again, police have all of this information. They have all the evidence. So it's mind-boggling that there haven't been charges.
Real quickly, as far as Officer Devine, who ended up becoming the, deputy chief there, apparently there are messages, quote, that he was having an inappropriate, suggestive contact with Sandra while she was one of the explorers in that little program, and, quote, full-fledged sexual encounters by the year of 2020. So I've got 30 seconds left for this, but the chief now is Chief Donna McNamara. It sounds like Donna McNamara is devastated and angry over all of this. Are there going to be charges if they have all this, text messaging evidence?
That really remains to be seen. And you're right, she is angry. She said as much in a press conference and in statements. She said strongly worded things, but she did even indicate that as officers, they were sort of derelict in their duty and they had lied and they had covered up things. So she's aware of that. It's curious that there haven't been any charges. And of course, we have two sets of charges that we could be talking about here. There are the alleged sexual assault charges against these guys. And now there is the question as to whether or not this suicide was in fact a homicide, according to Dr. Michael Botter, who came in and discovered that the hyoid bone had broken, which is not something that typically happens in a hanging, but it happens in a strangulation. So we could be looking at two sets of charges, and it does seem that the investigation is ongoing.
I mean, this is not even sexual. This is sexual assault of a child if these text messages ring true. Caitlin Becker, thank you for doing the job for us tonight. I appreciate it. Have a good time off on the 4th. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Ash.
Okay, I want to bring in Melissa Berry now. Melissa Berry runs the Justice for Sandra Birchmore Facebook page, which has almost 10,000 members. Melissa, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I am so perplexed by this story. I still can't get my head around why they don't think they have enough to go after these 3 guys and any of the others that are alleged to have had underage sex with this young girl. But you just heard, as Caitlin Becker reported, we're talking about 2 potential sets of criminal activity: the child rape and then also a potential murder. Why is it, other than this hyoid bone being broken in her neck, which might suggest that it's not suicide, why is it that many others believe that Sandra did not take her own life, that she was indeed murdered instead?
Well, I appreciate you having me on today. Um, because the manner of how her hanging was, she wasn't hanging from like a pole or something. She was actually in a fully seated position. The ligature was tied around her neck and around the door handle very tight. And that's usually a type of manner of death that prisoners kill themselves, not a young woman of 23. Usually people who hang themselves, they're elevated. She was fully seated, and just the circumstances of him leaving and how he came, and he was the last person to see her. The way he came in with the mask up, mask on, the hood up, and the baseball cap, head down. It was very suspicious how he came in and out of her building.
And we should be really clear here that Sandra did not seem to indicate to any of her friends that she was displeased about being pregnant. It seems to me she was actually preparing, and it seemed that she was excited. What do you know about that?
Yeah, she was telling anyone and anyone who would listen that she was pregnant. She was excited. She was buying a carriage. She bought a baby seat that actually got delivered the night that she died. And she also was buying tons of baby clothes. She was calling old friends, high school friends, and telling them that she was pregnant. She was absolutely excited to have this baby. So that's another reason why a lot of people don't think that she did commit suicide.
And she had told friends of hers that it was indeed Officer Matthew Farwell, a married man, much older than she. She was telling friends he was the father?
Yes, and she was also telling co-workers that he was the father.
Co-workers as well. All right, so now the connection to the Karen Reed case, because we're in the same geographical area, all of these towns together. Is there any other crossover with the Karen Reed case to Sandra Birchmore's case?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of police officers the same from the Canton PD, like Michael Lang. There's state troopers that are the same DA, so there's a lot of crossover because it's the same, she died in the same town as Officer O'Keefe, and so it's the same people who were investigating her case. It's different lead officers, but it's still the same Massachusetts State Police unit that investigated both cases. So there's a lot of crossover.
It's bizarre. So, with all of the Facebook group, and, a lot of times folks who are in social media, they can do a lot of harm if they get a little too aggressive, but they can also unearth some things. Has it been helpful? Have there been any clues in this Facebook group? And if not, what is everybody hoping for in this case that seems cold, but we know it's not?
Well, I've been gathering information on this case for a little over a year and a half, and I have been talking to family, friends, and people are just coming forward saying they didn't believe that she thought she killed herself, that people didn't believe that they thought she killed herself, and that, they want to make sure that justice is done for Sandra and her baby, because she deserves that in death, that she is treated better than she was treated in life by these officers. The police department failed Sandra. We need them to pick up the slack and actually stand up for Sandra. And right now, they're not.
And you know what? I want to just mention, as we look at that video, and I'm going to ask our control room to play it again, of Matthew Farwell coming in and out of Sandra's apartment in the days before she was discovered dead. He was apparently there for about 20 minutes. And as you can see, he walks in, he walks out, but his story was that he was there to end the relationship. That's what he told the police. Melissa Berry, I really appreciate you being on. Thank you so much for this, and keep us posted with anything that you hear with this group.
I really appreciate you having me on. Getting Sandra's case out there means the world to us. Thank you.
Well, it won't be the last time. Thank you for this. I want to bring in Stacey Honowitz now. She heads up the sex crimes and the child abuse unit in the state attorney's office in Broward County, Florida. Also, Stacey Honest, I always turn to you when I'm confused about cases like this because you know so much. I mean, you've just done so many years, I dare say decades, investigating this kind of thing. When you looked over the details of this case, what stood out to you and what do you see as potentially happening now that the clean lights are on this case?
Well, actually, first of all, it's not unusual for people that are very disgusted with what's gone on to kind of have this grassroots effort. And we have seen cases, you and I have both discussed cases where it's the public that's brought it to the attention of the police departments, of other institutions. And that's what we're seeing here. So what stands out? Who knew that she was having sex with these men while she was underage? Did she tell anybody? Did she let anybody know that she was being molested? Was she upset? Did she want to go to the police? Did she not go to the police because she was working with the police? And certainly in these explorer situations, most of the police departments do engage in these kind of programs. And so these kids are so excited to be working there that the last thing they want to do is then turn around and report a police officer who's mistreating them. And that's what we're seeing here. Now we're seeing all of these text messages. We're hearing all these witnesses saying we knew that she was having sex with these older police officers. Why didn't anybody do anything at the time? Why is it taking it now when she's not here to kind of figure out whether or not charges can be brought? And that's what you're seeing now. This overall investigation. It's not going to be investigated directly by that agency because there's a conflict of interest. We know that. Even though somebody new has come in, you still have a lot of the officers that were there at the time. So I'm sure they're bringing in maybe even the Department of Justice, the FBI, to go over all of the evidence that they now have based on the civil lawsuit and based on these messages and the witness statement. So it's a wait and see. I wish I had the answer to tell you why they didn't do something. I do.
And we have the sex crimes. But now we also have an allegation from the family that this may have been murder. And then Dr. Michael Batten coming in and looking at the files. He did not look at the body. Apparently she was cremated. He can't look at the body. But from the files, he says that hyoid bone was broken, and that does not happen in a hanging. So he says this is more like a murder than a hanging. Stacey, I'm going to call you back when we get more details on this. Do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Ash.
Always love talking to Stacey. I just want to make sure that, this is always tough. This conversation is tough. So I like to do this at the end of this kind of a report. If you or someone you know has been a victim of sexual assault, there is always help available. You can call this number at any time, day or night, 1-800-656-4673. It's also 1-800-656-HOPE. I always say it. Take a picture of your screen. Have it handy for when you may decide that you'd like some help. And still to come tonight, maybe he wants to make sure the feds never